Congratulations to all of you that submitted abstracts this year. Now comes the real work, and that is not only putting together our papers, but getting ready to present our papers. And so what I decided to do was interview Peter Khoury. Peter is the founder of Magnetic Speaking, and he's also a motivational speaker and a public speaking coach. So maybe Peter, can you give us some tips on how to get over our fears as engineers doing public speaking, because it's not exactly that easy.
Absolutely. And let me just add one more thing. You said that I'm the founder of Magnetic Speaking, which is a public speaking training company, also a motivational speaker. And one thing that most people don't know about me is I used to be an engineer, just like you, just like all the people who are listening today. And about 10 years ago, I decided that I wanted to change course because I didn't like what I did. No offense to engineers. And I wanted to do something else with my skills, so I decided I wanted to move from pharmaceutical engineering to professional speaking. And in the beginning, I thought it wouldn't be a problem until my first time standing in front of a group and speaking. And I realized that I was terrified. Really, I barely lasted 30 seconds. So I took acting classes, improv, stand-up comedy, to grow my skills and my confidence, and then I started speaking. I spoke initially on conflict management, leadership skills, and negotiation skills. And about 3.5 years ago, that's when I started to shift to public speaking, because some of my colleagues saw me at a conference and they asked me, how the heck did I go from there to here? Because they knew me. I would rather work on a spreadsheet than to stand up in front of a room because I was terrified of it. And then I started holding classes and it took off. Now we're one of the fastest growing public speaking training companies in the Bay Area. And you said what are some of the tips to get over the fear is to stretch yourself, to do things that are outside of your comfort zone, like participating at conferences, like taking acting lessons, improv, or coming to training just like we offer.
So, Peter, why don't you give us some tips on perhaps how to start a talk off? Maybe that would help us a lot, because I know that, I'm an engineer, and when I get up and start talking, I'm pretty darn nervous, and sometimes I mess up. So maybe you have some tips for us.
I would say the number one thing you can do to get over the nervousness is to realize that it's normal. Everybody feels the same way. Everybody's heart goes up. Their heart rate goes up, everybody's temperature goes up, everybody sweats a little, and that's normal. It happens to me, it happens to the president, Barack Obama, it happens to Bush, it happens to anybody who speaks. Now, the only difference between the speakers who have it under control and the speakers who don't have it under control is the interpretation. How do you interpret it? For me, I learned to interpret it as an excitement. So even right now, we're shooting this video, you feel my heart rate, it's up. And that's normal. I'm excited to be here.
I think my heart rate's up.
Yes, you're excited. and that's normal. That's the first thing. The second thing is you have to learn how to begin your talk in a different way than engineers do. Most of us engineers were trained to talk about the facts, the theory, and normally that's what we start with. And that's how you bore people to death, and you never stand out that way because all the engineers are doing it that way. So another tip is to learn how to start with a benefit. Like, begin your talk by answering why you're here and why is it important to your audience. And practice this many times over until it's natural. And you get up there, now in your mind you go, oh, my heart rate is up, but this is excitement. And then you stand in front of them, you look them in the eyes, and you start saying why you're here and why is it important to them. Why is it important for them to listen to the talk? And you have rehearsed it for a while now, this should come out naturally.
So, Peter, hopefully we've gotten over our nervousness and we've started off the talk, and next is the talk itself. And so how do we keep the audience engaged, especially when we're talking about a technical subject? We want to keep them awake, and a lot of times, I have to talk after lunch and they may be wanting to sleep, right?
Right. Yeah, sure. So there are many techniques. There are many techniques to help the presenter keep engaging the audience. The two that I would recommend to start implementing right away, one is starting every single piece of information with a question. For example, if you're talking about an app, for example, let's say Pocket God, it's a game, and you're going to use it as an example. If you're starting out with that, you would raise your hand and ask, how many of you know about Pocket God? And then if people raise their hands, you acknowledge them. If nobody raises their hand, then you go, that's great, then that's what we're going to talk about today. Okay. The second technique is called a follow-up question. Since you're delivering talks that have a lot of technical information and numbers, it's good every once in a while to check in with the audience and ask them, so does that make sense? So far so good? Are you getting something out of this? Mm-hmm. And I know it's risky sometimes to ask these questions, but it's really, really important. That's going to keep you on your toes, and it's also going to keep your audience on their toes.
Okay. Now, okay, so what about the end of the talk and trying to, summarize, or, how do you think that's best done?
The best thing to do at the end of the talk is to remember that as human beings, we like completion. We like a complete circle. So that makes it easy. And if you started the talk in a certain way, you need to end it in the same exact way, because that signals completion to the audience. Mm-hmm. So to me, in all my talks, all my keynotes, all my sales presentations, all my conference talks, I always end the same way I started. And I mirror image the introduction.
Okay, so are there any additional tips or things that we definitely should do or definitely should not do when we're preparing for a talk or when we're giving our talk?
I would say the number one thing engineers need to be working on consistently is their presentation skills. If they want to stand out in their organizations, if they want to increase their influence skills, they have to work on this. Because right now, if you look at the economy, we always have had a glass ceiling, one glass ceiling after the other. Sometimes it used to be racial, sometimes it's age dependent, sometimes it's cultural. But right now, the glass ceiling is the ability to communicate. And as an engineer, if you work on this skill and stand out, you're going to become the leader in your field. You're going to become the go-to guy or gal in your organization to represent the company at conferences. And that's going to open many, many doors for you. So that's my take-home message.
Okay. Well, thanks very much, Peter.
Thank you.
And hopefully we'll see you in October.
Likewise.
Okay.